I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading off each slide. That's not my game. But what I will do is give you a brief summary of what the slide represents. The goal of these slides, at least at the beginning, is to kind of help us or have us tell you what we think we've heard from you. So we get to leverage the RMT side a lot. And RMTs out there are doing upgrades and implementations and assessments and so forth. So they're really feeding us a lot of feedback on the Arbiter side on what needs to happen with our product or what the challenges are for the organizations that we work with. And so really the idea that we're hearing, and now again, everyone has a lot of different challenges, but we're here to hit the big ones. And so what we're really finding out is the major problem is there's a lot more demand and faster release expectations. And that's really kind of causing some friction because on the workload automation side or even on the AutoSys side, it's not moving as fast as say the development communities want. Now, obviously, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the main reasons, though, is that it's manual. And in a lot of shops that I work with or we work with, their changes are quite manual. And it's not because they want it to be manual, it's just because there's really not a lot of ways to automate that. And we'll get to the solution for that in a minute. But manual processes just, they're not slow, not just slow, but they're also landmines for production failure. So, meaning if you're doing manual changes, yes, it's going to take more time than automated, but it also means there could be human intervention and human error, and that can be the landmine for production failures. So, the question is, how do you keep up with development without adding a lot of operational risk? The idea that we're trying to make on this particular slide is there's a lot of different metrics associated to each of the organizations and how they do change. When we come into their environments, we say, hey, tell us about how you make your changes. And what you see in the top left corner is the 19-step metric is really the more organizations we talk to, we ask them, how do you get changes through into production? What are your steps? What's your process look like? And really, the surveys that we've done in the past have really yielded an average of 19 steps from the initial request all the way through into production. And so, that adds a good risk factor. And I'm not going to, beat the dead horse of last slide by saying, oh, every manual step is a landmine and this and that. You see it on the slide. The idea around it, though, is when you got the application teams that are really trying to push changes through, they're making updates to code, they're creating new applications, they want their changes in as fast as possible. So anything, if they're over here automated everything and you're over here being manual, what does that mean in terms of friction for them, right? And so this isn't necessarily a people problem. This is more of a process problem. So I work with a lot of folks that really are intelligent with how they use AutoSys. But the idea around it is it's kind of change fatigue, meaning I can be as fast as possible. I can be as intelligent with AutoSys as possible. But if I get so much, then I start to get change fatigue, meaning I can't keep up. Even the best in the business can only handle so much, right? We see that everywhere. You actually see that in pro sports. You see that even in our environment on the RMT side. I have a great project manager team, but a project manager can only be so good if they have the time and bandwidth to handle what's in front of them. Everywhere you in IT and even in life, you see a lot of fatigue if you throw too much at somebody. And then we have the whole bottleneck aspect, which is, as I mentioned, it's really not the technology or the people. It's the process that's in place today. And that's what we talk about really trying to overhaul is, all right, let's take a step back and look at your process. Where is it manual and how do we automate that? So when you're on this today, I encourage you to think about that as it relates to your environment. What's manual? And can it be automated? And the answer, based on my experience, is yes. And so let's go to the next slide and chat about that. We talk about this change fatigue thing. And the idea that we talk about is your best talent, as I mentioned, you can have a really, really strong AutoSys person and you're overwhelming them with the amount of manual change. So let's get that stuff automated so that they can focus more on the actual things you want them to, like integrating with new applications, all the new integrations coming out, adding AI and agentic AI in there. Let's get them some time to be able to do that, not these changes every day, day in and day out. What this particular slide is really about is we in the original slide that the slide before you saw, where I talked about the 19th step. process, meaning manual steps. The average of the organizations we've talked to, they take 19 steps on average. Now there's some that are 30 and there's some that are 12 and but the average is about 19. As well as that discussion, we also say to each of these different groups, you got developers, you got managers, and you got schedulers. We ask them, help us understand what are your biggest challenges? And so you can see here the developers say this often. We hear it all the time. Our code is ready. We've done all these different things in our environment to streamline the whole idea, the development stack. Everything from the initial coding, we're putting agentic AI, we're having AI help us write code quicker. That means we're ready to move things into production really quickly. The problem is we're stuck because even if I can do things many times in a day, I'm stuck on getting them into production, so to speak, because I have to make sure that the automation portion of that, which is the AutoSys side, they need to have their updates, they need to have their jobs created so that I can move my code in, and therefore I'm kind of stuck. A little bit of a bottleneck. Then we go to the managers and we say, what are your biggest issues? What's burning bright for you today? And they say, of course, like everybody says, well, we're being pressed for AI and also using more automation. And we want to increase the speed and accuracy, but I got to reduce costs. And by the way, I have to be more accurate than I am today on my changes. That sounds like an impossible feat, but it's what they're being asked, and that's what they're telling us. And then we get to the schedulers, and we say, what are your issues? Of course, there's many. What's the biggest ones you're facing? And they say, well, the development communities, they're pursuing AI and they're being able to move quicker. We want to pursue AI, don't have a lot of time to do that because if I do that, then I'm taking away of making production changes and I really can't do that. In addition, my integrations and more streamlined processes are being really pushed. And so I'm really held back by manual efforts and email tag, meaning email tag being I'm not really getting what I need from the developer, so I kind of got to go back to them and ask for more and this and that. Even if I have an environment where it's really self-service and my development community can make their changes, when they get to the point where they're going to put it into production and they send it over to us, I still don't have everything that I need. My question to you all, and I'm not going to ask you to answer today, but think about it. And if you want, you can put a question in the chat and I can hit it later. But think about what resonates the most for you all? Is it the code? Is it the AI piece? Is it manual efforts are really bogging me down? So think about that. What's really pressing for you all?